So today's session is on some custom panels and integrations. My name is Brian Noon. I'm the Senior Manager for Success Operations from the Customer Success team. What we want to do today is help you take advantage of custom panels and some other service integrations to make Summon a more valuable resource and a more comprehensive resource for your users. So after the session, you'll be able to create custom panels to highlight important information for your users. Use Summon Analytics in a specific way to guide your efforts on selecting what you want to include in those custom panels. And we'll also talk about some other service integrations, including LibGuides, Chat, Syndetics, and Google Scholar. So starting with custom panels and the eternal question, what do custom panels do? And very simply, they give you the ability to display custom blocks of information you want to highlight to your end users every time they search in Summon. You can choose the content, and you also can choose if it's information that always appears in the screen or appears selectively based on the user's search terms. Some examples that customers have created, including sharing tips for accessing resources from on or off campus, notice of upcoming library closures, adding an embedded LibGuides in-page chat widget, something that was shared by North Carolina Central University, adding a LibGuides drop-down list, something the U.S. Naval Academy Library shared, and also offering virtual research appointments, also a custom panel that was previously shared by a presentation from Bowling Green a couple of years ago on this topic. This is just the tip of the iceberg, so we'll be talking more about the mechanism of setting up the custom panels, but also trying to encourage sharing of some of these great panels that are out there in the user community. So when you view the Summon interface, I'm showing one of our demo accounts. The user has executed a search. In the far right column, that's where you're going to see your custom panels. You see a few different examples here related to COVID updates, remote access help, a section to highlight a Heritage Quest resource. Some of the others I mentioned was a option to book virtual appointments for research. A customer created an external search mechanism to send out searches to PubMed, and customers have also integrated a journal finder option to send users to the journal finder to see the journal resources from your eJournal portal. These are just a few of the examples that are possible. In order to configure custom panels, you go to the Summon Administration Console, go to the Pages section, and then click Custom Panel Sections. At the top of the screen, you can start adding new custom panel sections. And I'm going to start with a pretty basic example. If you just want to do a custom panel using text, all you have to do is enter a section heading, in other words, a title. Make sure that's a unique title. It's not common with any previously created custom panel sections. Enter the body of the text of the new section in the box underneath. In this particular simpler model of a custom panel, you would not be using HTML. In a moment, I'll talk about the more advanced options using source code. You can, however, use the built-in menus to do formatting, bolding, indenting, bullets, and so forth. You have the option to choose the persistent checkbox if you want the the custom panel section to always appear in the Summon column on the right side of the page. You want to check the persistent box. You can choose to disable custom panel sections. You might use this in the context of something that you use once a year, like holiday hours. Maybe after January, you would turn off the holiday hours section, but you could always turn it back on the following year and reuse the panel that you previously created. Once you've entered in your custom panel details, just click Save. It will take about 5 to 10 minutes for that custom panel section to appear in Summon. Now, there's some other edits that we can perform to change how that new section will function. We can go back to the custom panel section, but before I talk about that, I want to mention you can upload a data file with multiple custom panel details and built right into the Summon admin console. It describes the fields that you want to include, and you can even download a sample file. So if you want to upload a number of different custom panels and you don't want to do them one by one, you can do batch uploading. So back to editing the custom panel. If you click on the name of the section in this part of the Summon admin console and choose Edit, you're going to see the section preview window. You might have to scroll up if you have many custom panel sections already defined. You might have to scroll up to the top of the page to see this section preview window. Here I have an example of a very simple text section about holiday hours. If you haven't checked the persistent checkbox, you only want this to appear based on search terms entered by the users. You will need to define tags that will trigger the display of the custom panel section. When you create the new section, it will automatically create a tag based on the section heading. Excuse me. But that, for obvious reasons here, is not a great example of a search tag. You want to use search terms, search keywords that an end user might use to be looking for library hours or library holiday hours, for example. So it's important to keep in mind that if you are not going to set this as a persistent tag, you want to make sure that you entered tags through the edit mechanism to make sure that that's displaying at the right times. You can also move the display of a particular panel section to the top or the bottom of the custom panel. You can remove it, but again, as I described earlier, another option is to simply disable it, especially if you think you might reuse that in the future. That might be a preferable option. So for very simple custom panels, it really doesn't take much time at all to put in a quick message and have it show up in Summon in literally in 5 or 10 minutes. This can be a powerful feature even if you're not doing anything more than just simple communicating text information to your users. Once you start using custom panels, we do recommend that you prioritize custom panels above topics. So you would want to go to the settings in the Summon admin console and choose topics. And in the topics menu, you'll see in the middle there an option, topics display below custom blocks. And you want to turn that on when you start using custom panels. That will make sure that those custom panels that you are creating are floating to the top of the screen. Now, I've really only talked about a very basic custom panel, but it still can be very useful. We do have many customers using much more rich and detailed custom panel sections, and they're doing that by loading HTML, CSS, or JavaScript source code into the custom panel section. So I first want to start by just explaining how you would add custom code into a new custom panel section. So similar to where we started earlier, we would enter a section heading, also known as a title, and again, make sure it's unique. And then in the Tools button, you will see an option, Source Code. That's going to pop up a separate window called the Source Code pop-up menu. You would paste in the source code that you have and click Save, and that will be displayed in Summon in 5 or 10 minutes, just like the basic text version that I described earlier. So There could be a long discussion about how you build HTML, CSS, and JavaScript tags and sections into your summon. Before we get into that in more detail, I just wanted to show how simple it is to actually plug this in and get it showing in summon. But an important question to ask yourself is, what should I be showing to my users? What do they need? And I want to propose that using the popular searches report in Summon Analytics can help you come up with some great ideas for custom panels. So this is one of the reports, and this is a great application of Summon Analytics if you haven't used it before, just to see what are the high traffic searches happening in Summon, and is that going to give us some information about things that we might want to highlight clearly in the custom panel to make it easier for the end users. So to get to Summon Analytics, you want to go back to the Summon Admin Console and click on Usage. And then your browser may trigger you to click another link to access the Summon User Statistics section. Once you get to the Summon Analytics main page, the home page, what you need to do is go to the catalog link and click catalog. From the catalog, you'll see in the left panel, we're going to go to the shared reports folder, choose Summon, and then under usage, choose the reports folder. That's where the bulk of the example reports exist that you can use to analyze the activity at your institution. For the purposes of this discussion, we are going to edit the popular search report. So once we see that, we're going to click the edit button, and that's going to take us to the popular searches report. Initially, you'll see in the tabs in the upper left corner that you will see different tabs: criteria, results, prompts, and advanced. It will first show you the results view. We want to click on criteria because we're probably going to want to modify the rules of the report to make it relevant for your institution. So when we click on criteria, you'll see the selected columns, meaning what is shown in the report, and then filters, meaning what are the conditions under which the data is being presented. The filters entry, the first one is searches in top 500. So let's take a closer look at that. If we were to mouse over that particular filter and click the pencil icon, this is how we can edit this particular filter. So again, this is including searches that are in the top 500 of searches. Depending on your institution, a smaller number might make more sense, or you might want to try a larger number to get a broader list. Or you might want to try both sides of that 500 level and see what makes sense. All you have to do is modify the value. In this example, I'm changing the value from 500 to 250. And once we click OK, that filter will be set in place. Now, an interesting filter that's built into these reports, unless otherwise specified, there are two filters here that are intended to show data from the last 7 months. And a common question we get is, why is the default 7 months? And I don't know. It just is, but I think in many cases you're going to want to change this to a calendar year or multiple years or even in the last 6 months, whatever makes sense to you. And an easy way to do that is just edit one of these filters, and you would want to click the little X next to the SQL expression. That is the rules in place for the current date filter. And you could switch the operator to something more straightforward, like date is between, like the example that you see here. So let's say we wanted to see the data from December 2020 to 2021. It's a very simple filter that you can put in place. Once you change those settings, you can click OK. And when you go back to the criteria page, you'll see the searches in top 250 modification. The second entry is the December to December date filter that we set. Now, because we have a date filter set in just one filter, we really don't need this extra filter left over from the default report. So we'll want to mouse over it and click the little X icon and remove that from the report. Once you've done that, go ahead and click the Results tab. Now we're seeing the results of the report. A few things I want to point out that you might want to change. The report kind of has a default narrative or title that says popular searches since January 1st, 2016. Obviously, that's not relevant for the date range that we picked, so you could click to modify that. You will probably want to save this report so that you can use it in the future. You have the option to save it to My Reports folder or My folder, or each institution has their own folder name where you could save reports that all of your colleagues could see. So once you save as, it'll give you a chance to save that report. Now, while I've been talking, actually, let me point out one other thing. Clicking the export. So if you want to output this report in a number of formats, PDF, Excel, just click on the export option, and it'll give you a menu to choose your export options. Now, as I've been showing these different features, you might have taken a glance at the search strings that you see here. I will point out, yes, this is sample data. I don't think many of you will have heavy search activity related to time travel, but it's a good point that you might just get surprised by what your users are searching for if you haven't seen this report before. And it might really give you some ideas for things that the users would immediately find useful. Sometimes it's, I recall in a previous session, one of our customers shared a report where there were a lot of searches related to the school song. Or the library hours is common, and of course, searches for specific research content. So this is why we think evaluating the popular searches report is going to give you a really helpful tool to think about what might be a valuable addition to custom panels. Now, I want to jump back and talk more about what are some of those things that you can do with custom panels. And I want to share some examples. At a more basic level, if you just want to standardize the formatting and look and feel of your custom panel sections, one option you have is to use a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get editor. Some examples that I've seen include Froala, TinyMCE. I believe SpringShare's LibGuides also has its own WYSIWYG editor, and basically you input the information that you want to share, format it the way you want to see it, and then it allows you to export that information in a coded version. And then you could just copy and paste that right into the tools source code section in the custom panel section. And it will display as you saw in your WYSIWYG editor. So this is more of a basic option just for standardizing formatting, or some customers are very comfortable with coding, but just don't have time to do it. And some are less familiar with using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which are all supported by the custom panels. So there are some options here. You can just use it for formatting, but there are some terrific features that customers have come up using the custom panels. One of our customers shared with us an external search link feature. So whatever was the last search term in Summon can be clicked in this custom panel and execute a search to the library catalog or to PubMed. We have an example of this in our Summon demo environment. Another example is for customers using LibGuides, SpringShare LibGuides chat. The custom panel can actually allow you to support an in-page or embedded chat widget. This was developed by NC Central University, and you can see that on their Summon. We also have many other examples that you can see, not only see the end result, but see the code that is used to build it and what information you would plug in to the custom panel section to make that panel work for you. So I would encourage you to look for the knowledge article, what kinds of things can a library put in Summon custom panels? Now, I think you'll find some great ideas there, but that's really the tip of the iceberg. There are some great ideas out there in the user community, and we really want to encourage discussion among the customers and some sharing. You just might be able to implement a custom panel originally developed by one of the other Summit customers that would be a great benefit to your institution. So ways to communicate with your Summit customers. The most common is the Illuna Igloo email list. And I've included the link. If you haven't registered for these lists, you can click the links here and connect to the main Summon list. There's also some regional Summon 360 lists as well. There's a new feature in the new support center. It's called knowledge sharing groups. And perhaps this might be a useful way to share custom panels that you've created or communicate with other customers that have built really great custom panels. This is a brand new feature, so it's not something being used for this purpose now, but perhaps it's a good fit. So if you're brand new to using the custom panels, we're really glad that you joined us. And you know, one of the greatest things about working here is seeing how our customers collaborate together. And I would really encourage you to participate, reach out to the customer community through the mailing list and say, hey, you know, what are the custom panels you're using? Can you share the source code that you're using? There are some terrific opportunities here with this feature, and we really want you to get some great ideas from the user community. Really, this is one of those examples where those of us on the Ex Libris side, we see some of these examples, but we know we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg of what customers are doing out there.
And Brian, it looks like we do have a question in the chat. It's from James, and he asked, does Brian know of any custom panels that display contingent on data in the search results? For example, items in a particular location or a particular value in the content type facet.
Hi, James. Thanks for the question. I believe the only option here to make these appear selectively is based on choosing keywords for the search terms. Later on in the session, I'm going to talk a little about the idea exchange because there's a place where you can share great ideas like that if you want to see improvements to the functionality. That would be a great place to share that idea. But at the present time, I don't think that's possible. But it's a very interesting idea.
And that's it.
Okay, so moving on from custom panels, we want to, well, actually, I'm sorry, I meant to share something else. It can happen that when you start using custom panels, it could be a situation where you have so many panels, it's taking up a lot of screen space. So there's a couple of other options, somewhat related, that you might be able to use to help refine what should go in a custom panel. One of these features is called Best Bets. These are smaller notes that are also responsive to tags. Instead of showing in the right panel, they show at the top of the search results. And that might be an option that you want to consider and then save some real estate in the custom panel. Another option that exists is Database Recommender. It works very much like Best Bets. Automatically recommend databases that you have active in the Client Center or in Tota based on some default tags, and you can also customize those tags. So these are a couple of other options that might be something you want to incorporate in your overall efforts to present information to the users. We got a great question from Ian. Please elaborate on when to use custom panels versus Best Bets versus Database Recommender. I think this is going to be very much an individual choice. I think if you are happy with information that appears, kind of in a smaller window above the search results, so something, a quick notice that is responsive to specific tags. Best Bets might be a better option for that. Custom panels might be a better option to make something much more maybe you think it's of more value or more importance that you really want to the end users to notice. I think it's this. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think I would suggest testing it out both ways and see what works for you. I don't think there's a bad answer here, but if you find you have a lot of custom panels, it might help you to focus the custom panels on more strategic, more larger options, more interesting, more things that you want to really highlight in the custom panel, and then have Best Bets more of a quick note, and Database Recommender is just awareness. Hey, we have these databases associated with your search. So it really, the main difference here is the Best Bets and Database Recommender are you don't have the same level of control, such as with the HTML, CSS, JavaScript options you have with custom panels, and whereas the Best Bets are more smaller items that appear at the top of the search results. So I would suggest trying it out and see what works for you. But it's an excellent question.
And Brian, Anne had a question. Sometimes I do worry about using too many custom panels with mobile device users. Do you have a recommendation on how many custom panels are appropriate?
I don't think we have a specific, here's a solid limit. Interesting enough, there was a comment in the discussion list this morning about from a site that had many custom panels, and it was kind of pushing down the display of the results a little bit. So I really can't give you a specific, this is the number that you want to limit it to. I think the best way to approach that is do some testing, do some evaluation on what makes sense. You might want to decide if to use fewer persistent custom panels and more that are responsive to tags. But that's a good question. If you would like to follow up with me, I'll see if I can get some feedback from Brent Cook, our product manager, especially from the mobile perspective. So just a couple related knowledge resources. We have the documentation about custom panel sections. Also, I wanted to share a best practices document written by our customer success team using Summon Analytics to make strategic decisions. So give you some other ideas of how, if you're not using analytics now, maybe I'll give you some ideas on how to apply that very powerful tool to give you some valuable information in your strategic planning. Okay, I'm going to move on to service integration. So I'm going to discuss a few different examples here, just highlight some really beneficial options that you have to make certain content more visible, to offer chat to your users, and so on. So let's start with LibGuides integration, specifically SpringShare LibGuides. So the information I'm going to discuss here about integrating LibGuides is specific to SpringShare. If if you have LibGuides on another platform, you can request similar functionality in terms of adding LibGuides to your search and display. If you want to do this for SpringShare, all you have to do is submit a case to our support center and choose CDI as the asset and summon local content as the category. And this is the process to have SpringShare LibGuides indexed so that they can be searched through Summon. And as part of that process, the data gets indexed directly from LibGuides. There's full details of the information. You can see all the fields that are brought over here: title, publication date, author, publisher, copyright info, description, and other information. The navigation links from tab-based menus and LibGuides are also indexed. And here you can see a quick example. And one of my colleagues pointed out that a customer asked, well, why would I do this? We already have the LibGuides on the library homepage. And you know, I think our viewpoint here is, you know, making this information searchable in Summon is just going to expand the accessibility of that information to your users. Nothing prevents them from accessing it from the library website, but if you can pop that right in front of your users within your Summon search results, you're going to see more activity from the users. They're going to gain greater benefit from it. So we really think this is something that is a great thing to integrate into Summon. And it's pretty straightforward. You just have to put in a request again to our support team, and they will put this into process. Now, I mentioned a moment ago, this is also possible with LibGuides from other, you know, not provided from SpringShare. Now, the mechanism for integrating into Summon is very established for SpringShare. But if you have another platform, I would recommend just submitting a case and saying explicitly, we would like to integrate our LibGuides into Summon. We're not using SpringShare, we're using this platform. And the support team will work with you and confirm you know, how to move forward with that request.
Hey, Brian, it looks like we have another question. Virginia would like to know, does this work only with LibGuides CMS or does it work with plain LibGuides too?
I think it works with both, but let's take a note and we'll follow up with you about that. I think I'll need to check on that. I think it works with both, but we'll clarify.
And we have Anne in the chat saying it works with both. So
thanks, Anne.
thanks, Anne.
So another integration that's available is with LibAnswers. So you can harvest your FAQs from SpringShare LibAnswers and import them automatically to create a Summon best bet, which is the feature I talked about a moment ago. You also, and the nice thing about this is, once you set it up, it's an automatic mechanism. If you log into the admin console, go to Recommender and choose SpringShare. You'll be prompted to supply some LibAnswer details, API URL, client ID, and secret key. The instructions are actually built right into the LibAnswers settings page in Summon Admin Console, but we also have formal documentation on this. But just to show you what I mean, the process is outlined here right within the administrative configuration settings. So it also has a built-in test mechanism. And you would, once you verify that you are connecting successfully to SpringShare, you can start the harvest process. So again, this is pretty straightforward and will trigger the creation of best bets. Another option for LibGuides integration is the A to Z database. So the database finder widget can use SpringShare's A to Z list to allow users to search for databases your library has an active subscription for. You can also enable this to be searched for every summon query. And in a similar approach here, you're going to go to the admin console, go to Recommender, and choose SpringShare. Again, you're going to be prompted to provide some LibGuides details, API URL, client ID, and again, the instructions are actually built right into the settings, or you can consult our documentation as well. But as I showed earlier, here you can see some details about the A to Z settings. You can choose to show just the search widget or just enable A to Z database search or both. Again, once you enter in your credentials, you can do the test, and then once you save the settings, that will integrate that into your summon. Keep in mind that this doesn't appear immediately, so there is a test search option at the bottom just to make sure that it's making a good connection, and you can see examples. Okay, so I see a question from Ian. A to Z sounds more efficient than what's in 360. For example, in 360, Sage has multiple databases listed for one product. I think the best answer to that question is try it out and see what works best for you. Okay, I also want to talk a little bit about chat widgets. This is a feature supporting multiple different chat systems, and I think that's supposed to sound like library help. Also, SpringShare's LibAnswers, OCLC's question point. And a nice addition that we made, I think in late 2020 or during 2020, is integration with WhatsApp. So if you don't have a commercial chat system, this is a way to integrate a chat mechanism, without incurring a real cost to the library. So it's a nice option. So when the users see the chat window, they can move it around on the summon screen by clicking and dragging the header of the box, the chat box. When staff are unavailable, you can choose to provide an email window. So there's some, traditional chat functionality that you'll be able to see right in Summon. Again, you're going to go to the Summon Admin Console, choose Settings, and then click Chat. Now, this looks like a lot of configurations, but it's actually broken out by different platform. So the library help, the SpringShare, the question point, and then WhatsApp. So you really only have to turn this on to the specific chat platform that you're using. Also, from within the menu, mouse over those question marks. It's going to give you some guidance on what to enter in those boxes, or just clarify what is expected or what you should choose from a configuration standpoint. Down at the bottom, you're going to see general settings like where do you want the widget to appear as a default, set a image for when the chat is online and when is chat offline, and also define a widget email address if you're allowing the end users to send an email instead of initiating a chat when you are offline. Sorry. So it looks like a big config page, really, but it's quite straightforward and it's specific to the platform that you're using. Once you save your changes, that will integrate the chat mechanism.
Looks like we have a question from Virginia. If you subscribe to LibGuides CMS, oh, she's sharing a link. So if you subscribe to LibGuides CMS, you have access to the LibGuides API, and she shared a link. And then we have a question from Victor. Are there any plans to add more phone numbers on WhatsApp?
I'm afraid I can't answer the WhatsApp question. I'm going to talk in a moment about the ID exchange, and I think that might be a good place to pose that question, or specifically request, can we get more support for more phone numbers? And I'll talk about that towards the end of the session. So really the interface kind of walks you through the main configuration you need to do, but for detailed instructions, you can find the related documentation here. And Taylor, right, thanks for sharing the note that we are going to share this presentation to everybody, so you'll be able to access these links.
No problem.
So another integration that you can consider is Syndetics. So if you have a Syndetics subscription, which allows you to enrich content and incorporate it into Summon, including book cover images, TOCs, excerpt summaries, and abstracts, you can configure Summon to take advantage of this enrichment data through the Summon admin console. So when you go to the settings section, you want to click on Syndetics, and it's a pretty straightforward menu here for configuring this. Now, I will point out this is specific to customers who subscribe to Syndetics Plus or Syndetics Unbound. What you would want to do is change that custom slider and make sure it's allowing the Syndetics Plus, which is everything except the cover image, or just the cover images, or both. And then you need, if you have Syndetics Unbound, you need to enter your Unbound ID in addition to the Syndetics ID that you have, and click Save. Now, if you are not a Syndetics subscriber, there are going to be situations where some free book cover images will appear in the Summon search results. But in general, if you have opted for a Syndetics subscription, you'll see not only more book covers, but the other data enrichments. If you are a Summon Unbound customer, there's some additional configuration steps that you need to perform. You need to go to the Pages section of the admin console and click Detail Page. And down at the bottom, make sure Syndetics Unbound is in the Available column, and move it to the Active column. So that will ensure that you are getting just the Syndetics Unbound information. That's Syndetics Unbound. Lastly, I'm going to talk very briefly about activating Google Scholar. Now, for most customers, this was set up during your Summon implementation. Just a process to make Google Scholar a open URL source for your 360 link resolver. Now, this is more of a 360 link feature than a Summon feature, but it's an important integration. So any students or other patrons who want to do research in Google Scholar can connect out see your holdings and connect out to your 360 results page. So it's pretty easy to confirm if you already have this configured. If you go to the Google Scholar setup section of administer your products in the 360 Client Center, you'll see register with Google Scholar with a check mark and with other fields entered. And if you see that all filled out, then you're up and running. If it's not configured, we suggest that you review the Google Scholar FAQ just to give you a little background information. But filling out the Google Scholar setup is pretty straightforward. It's going to prompt you to enter an institution name, which is your institution name, a full text link name. This means that when Google Scholar recognizes that you have full text, and it does this by an institutional holdings file that we send to Google on a weekly basis on your behalf. All that has is ISSNs, titles, and core data like that, so that Google Scholar can determine if you, and the coverage period, so you can, Google Scholar can determine if you have full text or not. Because it can determine that, there are two links, one if you have full text and one if you don't, and you can define the text of that link as it appears in Google Scholar. The link resolver base URL. This is something that the documentation will explain that we recommend using your libhash combined together with the example URL that you see here. And if and if you're like me, the first thing you might say is, what is libhash? So I know we have some Summon and 360 pros out there, but it's certainly an odd yes. That's I was very much thinking, do I get eggs with that when I saw libhash? So very simply, you can find your libhash just by going to the eJournal portal URL, and the libhash is the syntax that you see at the beginning of the link. And that is just a unique identifier. And you would take that libhash and combine it with the example link resolver base URL that you see in the sample here. And that will develop your link resolver base URL in Google Scholar. Providing IP address ranges is something that you do want to check, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment. You can also choose that only users from institutional IPs will see your holdings and your full text links in Google Scholar.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Susan has a question. Will the link resolver URL ever go to HTTPS? ?
I understand the question. I don't know if we have a time frame for that. I will check with our product managers and see if we have a pathway for that. I'm sure if that's something that is coming, I would encourage you to participate in the future roadmap sessions that our product managers host periodically. So an important reminder that's relevant for someone activating Google Scholar for the first time, but also just for general good practices for 360 Link users, is making sure you periodically check and update the institutional IPs you have recorded in the 360 Client Center. It's very easy to understand this might slip off the radar sometimes, but it's a good thing to be checking periodically just to make sure your information is up to date. So to check your IPs, just go to the 360 Client Center, go to Manage Your Library, and click Library Settings, and then find the Library Institutional IP section, and just make sure that's complete. Just keep a note when you enter the IPs, don't use wildcards like asterisk. If you want to see what your holdings look like in Google Scholar, you can just go to scholar.google.com. In the left column, there's a button with 3 lines. Just click on Settings and choose Library Links, and you can search for your institution name. Check the checkbox for your institution name and do a search in Google Scholar, and you'll see your holdings information being represented in terms of a full text or a not full text link. I think this is very familiar with a lot of customers, but even if it's old news, it's always a good reminder to make sure those IPs are up to date. And that's why I wanted to mention it as well.
And Brian, it looks like Susan also has a question. Scholar.google.com is also HTTPS.
Yes, sorry, my error there. You're correct. And yes, I understand the desire for it to be using the HTTPS. If I'm going to share an email address at the end of the conversation, if you'd like to reach out to me, I'm going to check and see if we have any news on making 360 Link run on HTTPS. So those are the service integrations that I want to touch on. If you have ideas for other integrations or improvements that you would like to see in Summon, it doesn't have to be integrations. It could be functional improvements. It could also be content improvements. We would encourage you to participate in the idea exchange. If you go to ideas.exlibrisgroup.com, I would suggest clicking the FAQ link at the bottom of the page, or just use the link that you see here. It'll explain how to set up an account. You know, anybody can set up an account. It's very simple. And it will allow you then to submit your own ideas for improvements to Summon 360, or to recommend additions to CDI, for example, in the content section of the idea exchange. You can also search for existing ideas and vote on them to promote them. And our product management team is taking those votes into account as they prioritize ideas from customers. So we would encourage you to take advantage of that. I would certainly recommend adding in the request to have support for more phone numbers in WhatsApp. And there, I don't know personally, but it's possible there's already an idea request for 360 Link to run on HTTPS. You might find an existing entry there or add one there, but I'll check to see if that's in our plans.
And it looks like we have a couple questions in the chat. One from Julia Fernandez that says, she's just referencing a section where you said, please copy the following JavaScript file and CSS file to your own web space, remotely link it in there, link it from there, and put your lib hash in the appropriate spot. Her question is, what is our web space?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing this.
From Julia Fernandez. It says to host privately, so maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to copy
Let me,
it into the chat. And just a reminder to everybody, when you're submitting questions, please do all panelists. Thanks.
Okay, so the reference to libhash here was specific to Google Scholar in the Google Scholar setup. So we'd use this basic URL structure. You would just swap in your own libhash, which you can find in your eJournal Portal URL. And if I'm missing, if that's not the question, please let me know. So we're just running out of time. There's a one other thing that I wanted to mention. On Tuesday the 7th, we have a session scheduled to talk about the new refreshed UI for Summon. Would definitely recommend that you attend. If you go to the webinar section of the Exlibris website, just follow this link, you can register. And Taylor, if you want to, Taylor Ray, if you want to pass on that question to me, I'll follow up directly with that individual.
Okay, sounds good, Brian.
Okay, any other questions? James, thank you for adding the note about Google Scholar in reference to customers using Summon over Alma. So if you have any follow-up questions, would like to reach out to me, you can use this email address, customersuccess@exlibrisgroup.com.
I'll also just remind everybody that when you close today's session, a survey will pop up. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's session, any suggestions for future sessions you'd like to see from us. We really do value your input and take it into account as we plan what we're offering. So thank you for taking the time if you can. And Brian, unless you have anything else, I think you've done a wonderful job. And
Thank you all for attending, and get out there and share those custom panels.